2025. And here in Bharatvash, in Radhakund anyway, this is probably the worst season of the year, just mentioning it. Very, very hot, no rain in sight, and it's the tail end of the summer before we get into the cooler time. Kartik is just around the corner, so we should start thinking about our Kartik Brat and how we're going to follow Kartik this year. So, continuing with Adi-lila, chapter 16. Agyan timirandasya gyananjala shalakaya chakshu unmilitam jena tasmai shri guruve namaha guruve gaudachandraya radhikaya tadalaye krishnaya krishna bhaktaya tada bhaktaya namo namaha Shri Caitanya manobishtam shtapitam jena bhutale swayam rupa kadamayam dadati swapadantikam Priya Sarupe, Dayata Sarupe, Prema Sarupe, Sahaja Virupe, Nijana Rupe, Prabhu Eka Rupe, Tatana Rupe, Swavilasa Rupe. Anapita Chirim Chirat Kuruna Varatino Kalo, Samarapaitam Unnata Ujvala Rasam Swabhakti Shriyam, Hari Purata Sundara Tutikatamba Satipita, Sada Kritare Kandare Spuratu Vasachinandanaha. Yam pravajantamana petyam apeti krityam dvaipaino viraha katara ajuhava putre titam matayot taravo benidustam sarvabhutam hridim munimanatoshmi bhaktya vihina aparada lakshay shiptascha karmadi tarangamadye kripamaitvam sharanam prapana brinde namaste charanarvindam Bhajami radham aravinda netram smarami radham madhurashmitasyam vadami radham karuna baradram tato mamanasti katyena kapi tavaivasmi najivami tvaivina iti vignaya radhe tvam nayamam charanantikam. I'm first of all offering millions and millions of Dandavat pranams unto the lotus feet of my most beloved Gurudev, Nitya-lila Pravishta Om Asto Tarasara Shishimad Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And I'm offering the same again millions and millions of times unto our dear most beloved Nitya-lila Pravishta Om Asto Tarasara Shishimad Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And to our dear most beloved Srila Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami and all our divine Rupanuga Guru Varak and all the Vaishnava and Vaishnavi devotees of the Lord, my Dandavat pranams to all of you. Vancha kalpa tarupyascha kripa sindhuvevacha patitanam pavnibhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So we're reading from text 51 today, and we're into a most fascinating description now in this chapter of when Mahaprabhu is purifying the pride of Keshav Kashmiri, that Digvijay Pandit, who has just composed 100 verses, Shataka, glorifying the Ganga. He composed them as fast as the wind. And Mahaprabhu, by his brilliant capacity of a Shruti Dara, has remembered the center verse, verse 50. And he's repeating it back to Keshav Kashmiri with all its embellishments and its faults. And it's such a sublime way that Mahaprabhu is purifying this great scholar and Pandit who's been blessed by Mother Saraswati. So this is the pastime. Today we're going to discuss many aspects of grammar, etc., which are very purifying to hear and appreciate the height of the Sanskrit language. It indicates civilization. As I said yesterday, the Sanskrit language has 55,000 sounds. English has 300. So it's like, huge distinction. So now, text 51. Jaya Jaya Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Shri Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Prabhu Kahena Ataiva Puchiya Tumara Vichariya guna dosha bujhaha amare. Translation. Taking a humble position, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "Because I am not on your level, I have asked you to teach me by explaining the false and good qualities in your poetry." Text 52. Nahi padi alankara koriyache shravan, tate eshlokate ki bahu dosha guna. Translation. Certainly I have not studied the art of literary embellishments, but I have heard about it from higher circles, and thus I can review this verse and find in it many faults and many good qualities. Purport. The statement, Kariyachi Shravan, I have heard, is very important in the sense that hearing is more important than directly studying or perceiving. If one is expert in hearing and hears from the right source, his knowledge is immediately perfect. This knowledge is called Shruti Panta, Shrota Panta, or the acquisition of knowledge by hearing from authorities. All Vedic knowledge is based on the principle that one must approach a bona fide spiritual master and hear from him the authoritative statements of the Vedas. It is not necessary for one to be a highly polished literary man to receive knowledge. To receive perfect knowledge from a perfect person, one must be expert in hearing. This is called the descending process of deductive knowledge, called Avaroha Panta. And I explained yesterday, we have the sadhu, and we have the sadhan, and we have the sadhya. This is all perfect. Sad means perfect. So in this line from the Sadguru is perfect. And then the Sadhak is the perfect practitioner. And the Sadhan is the perfect practice. And the Sadhya is the perfect conclusion. So in this world filled with anomalies and faults, it's very hard for us even to conceive of perfection. The spiritual realm itself is only perfect. That's why it's so ludicrous to imagine that we fell from such a place. If it's perfect, you can't fall from such a place. So that's the difficulty with someone imagining that we fell from a perfect place, that you already put a smear on the idea of perfection in the spiritual realm. So, and this flow, this current of knowledge coming through Baladev Prabhu, through the Guru Parampara, is called Ava Roha Panta. We can remember this word Ava by the word avatar. Avatar means to descend. So Avaroha, in contrast to Aroha. Aroha means ascending, means I am doing the work by my prowess, my scholarship, my intellect, etc. Prabhupada is saying in this purport, it's not necessary to be highly polished literary man to understand these things. It's necessary to be submissively hearing. This is the only, we have two ears. You know, we have one mouth to keep the mouth closed, but just to hear. And then we can receive all transcendental knowledge. We don't have to be a bright spark, you know, a scholar. Text 53. Kavi kahe kaha deki kona guna dosh, Prabhu kahe nat kahi suna na kahi ha rosh. Translation. The poet said, all right, let me see what good qualities and faults you have found. The poet is Keshav Kashmiri. The Lord, because he's just bewildered. He can't think of any faults or any embellishments that are in his. He's just reciting it because Mother Saraswati is empowering his tongue. But he doesn't really know the heart of it, the essence of it. The Lord replied, let me speak and please hear me without becoming angry. Usually if you pick or pinch the presentations of someone who's very proud, unless they're wise and want to hear what you say, the false ego is obstructing and they just become angry as a response. Text 54. Pancha dosha e shloke pancha alankar, krama ami kahe suna kahe ka karaha vichar. Translation. My dear sir, in this verse there are 5 faults and 5 literary ornaments. I shall state them one after another. Kindly hear me and then give me your judgment. Give your judgment. Purport. In the verse beginning, Mahatvam Gangaya, there are 5 literary ornaments and 5 examples of faulty composition. Now, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada is going to give us a window into Sanskrit grammar. We should appreciate Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. He's already given some purports about the beauty of Sanskrit. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada himself is a Sanskrit scholar, 100%. So he's telling us it takes 12 years to learn the Vyakyaran, the grammar of Sanskrit. So he's very kindly going to explain this step by step, which is not easy for someone who knows nothing about Sanskrit to understand. But what we can appreciate is the maturity of the language, the height of the language, indicating civilization. If a civilization speaks this language, it means they're highly sophisticated, they're highly advanced. In the spiritual realm, we read books like Vidagdha Madhav. They are often speaking in Sanskrit with each other, because in Sanskrit you can describe much more the emotions and the feelings that you want to express, and you can just drop a particular letter or add a letter or have emphasis on a particular aspect, and you can mean something completely different. So it's going to explain here. Mahatvam Gangaya. There are 5 literary ornaments and 5 examples of faulty composition. There are 2 examples of the fault called Avimrista Vidayamsa, and 1 example of each of the faults of Virarudha Mati, Puna Ukti, and Bhagna Kram. These are the faults. Vimrista means clean, and Vidyangsa means predicate. It is a general rule of composition to establish a subject first and then give its predicate. For example, according to Sanskrit grammar, if one says, "This man is learned," his composition is in order. But if one says, "Learned is this man," the composition is not in order. Such a flaw is called Avimrista Vidyam Angsa Dosh, or the fault of unclean composition. The subject matter to be known of the verse is the glorification of the Ganges, and therefore the word idam, this, or what is known, should have been placed before instead of after the glorification. The subject matter already known should be placed before the unknown, so that its meaning will not be misconstrued. The second instance of Avimrista Vidyamsi Dosh occurs in the words Dvitiya Shri Lakshmi Eva. In this composition, the word Dvitiya, second, and Vidya is or unknown. Placing the unknown first to make the compound word Dvitiya Shri Lakshmi is another fault. The words Dvitiya Shri Lakshmi Eva are intended to compare the Ganges to the goddess of fortune, but because of this fault, the meaning of the compound word was bewildering. The third fault is that the Virud Mati, or the contradictory conception in the words Bhavani Bhartu. The words Bhavani refers to the wife of Bhava, Lord Shiva. But since Bhavani is already known as the wife of Lord Shiva, to add the word Bharta, husband, thus forming a compound meaning, the husband of the wife of Lord Shiva, is contradictory, for it thus appears as if the wife of Lord Shiva has another husband. Understand? It's very precise. The fourth fault is Puna Ukti, or redundancy, which occurs when the verb vibhavati flourishes, which should have ended the composition, is further qualified by the unnecessary adjective adbhuta guna, endowed with wonderful qualities. The fifth fault is bhagna kram, which means broken order. In the first, third, and fourth lines, there is anupras, or alliteration, created by the sounds ta, ra, and ba. But in the second line, there is no such anuprash, and therefore the order is broken. So, because Mahaprabhu is commenting on Saraswati Devi's language, Saraswati Devi is the goddess of learning. She's the empress of all knowledge and learning. So Mahaprabhu is being very exact in his descriptions of the fault of her language. It's so beautiful, really, to appreciate. It's like the gods are talking. Mahaprabhu is speaking to goddess Saraswati, basically. Text 55. Avimrista vidyayanksa duitani china virudamati bhagnakram puna ata doshatina. Translation. In this verse, the fault of avimrishta vidyayanksa occurs twice, and the faults of virudamati, bhagnakram, and puna'ata occur once each. Gangara mahatva shloke mula vidheya idam shabde anuvada pache avideya. Translation. The glorification of the Ganges, Mahatvam Gangeya, is the principal unknown subject matter in this verse, and the known subject matter is indicated by the word idam, which has been placed after the unknown. Text 57. Videya age kahe pache kile anuvad e lagi shlokera artha kariache bad. Translation. Because you have placed the known subject at the end and that which is unknown at the beginning, the composition is faulty, and the meaning of the words has become doubtful. Text 58. Anuvadam anukritaiva na vedyam udirayate na hya alambapas padam kinchit kuchachit pratishtati. Without first mentioning what is known, one should not introduce the unknown, for that which has no solid basis can never be established anywhere. Purport. This is a verse from Ekadashi Tattva. Text 51. Dvitiya Dvitiya Shri Lakshmi idham Vitvayatva vidhe samse gona hoile sabdartha gela kshaya. Translation. The word Dvitiya Shri Lakshmi, the second all-opulent goddess of fortune, the quality of being a second Lakshmi, is the unknown. In making this compound word, the meaning became secondary, and the originally intended meaning was lost. Text 60. Dvitiya Shabda Vidheyataha Adi-lila Samas Lakshmira Samatha Artha Karila Vinats. Translation. Because the word Dvitiya, second, is the unknown, in its combination with this compound word, the intended meaning of equality with Lakshmi is lost, because it's actually saying that Ganga Devi is like Lakshmi Devi in her distribution of opulence. Text 61. Avimrista vidyayangsa edo sharanam ara eka dosha ache sunas savadan. Translation. Not only is there the fault of avimrista and vidyayangsa, but there is also another fault which I will point out to you. Kindly hear me with great attention. Understand, Mahaprabhu is about 13 years old now. He's just like a kid, but he's speaking like an old man. But actually his physical age, he's in his Poganda age. And Keshav Kashmiri is probably in his 40s, 50s, something like that. So how astounding for Keshav Kashmiri. Mahaprabhu is like a young boy. He's in his Poganda age. He's just beginning to be a teacher. He's just starting in his brilliance. He hasn't got married yet. So he's about 13 or 14 maximum. That's already happened?
Yeah.
Has it?
But she left her body, and now he will marry this new
Okay. Yeah, so maybe a little bit older then, maybe about 15.
No, yeah. I think they were married young though.
Oh, definitely married
Yeah.
young. But I'm trying to calculate the age of Mahaprabhu. So Mahaprabhu would be about probably 14, 15, something like that. But certainly just a young boy, who had been considered a young boy by Keshav Kashmiri. Text 62. Bhavani Patra Shabda Dile Pai Santosha Viruda Mati Krita Nama E Mahadosha. There is another great fault. You have arranged the word Bhavani Bhatra to your great satisfaction, but this betrays the fault of contradiction. Text 63. Bhavani Shabda Kahe Mahadevara Grihini Tanra Bhatra Kahile Dvitiya Bhatra Janini. Translation. The word Bhavani means the wife of Lord Shiva, but when we mention her husband, one might conclude that she has another husband. Text 64. Shiva Patnir Partra Iha Sunite Virudha Mati Krita Sabda Shastra Nahi Shuddha. Translation. It is contradictory to hear that Lord Shiva's wife has another husband. The use of such words as in literature creates the fault called Virudha Mati Krit. Text 65. Brahmana Patnira Pratara Haste Deha Dan Shabda Suniteya Hoya Dvitiya Bharata Gyan. Translation. If someone says, place this charity in the hand of the husband of the wife of the Brahmana. Follow that? I'll say it again. Place this charity in the hand of the husband of the wife of the Brahmana. There's two persons here. When we hear these contradictory words, we immediately understand that the Brahmana's wife has another husband. Text 66. Vibhavati Koryavakya Sangapuna Vishana Adbhuta Gana E Puna Atta Dushana. Translation. The statement of the word Vibhavati, flourishes, is complete. Qualifying it with the adjective Adbhuta Guna, wonderful qualities, creates the fault of redundancy. Text 67. Tine pade anuprashate ki anupam eka pada nahi e dosha bhagna kram. Translation. There is extraordinary alliteration in 3 lines of the verse, but in 1 line there is no such alliteration. This is the fault of deviation. Text 68. Yadyapi e shloke ache pancha alankar e pancha dosha shloke koile charaka hara ara. Translation. Although there are 5 literary ornaments decorating this verse, the entire verse has been spoiled by these 5 most faulty presentations. Text 69. Darsha alankarya di eka shloka haya eka dosha sabha alankara hoye shaya. If there are 10 literary ornaments in a verse, but even 1 faulty expression, the entire verse is nullified. Text 70. Sundara sarira yache bhushana bhusita eka sveta kushte yache koreya vigita. Translation. One's beautiful body may be decorated with jewels, but 1 spot of white leprosy makes the entire body abominable. Purport. The great sage Bharat Muni, an authority on poetic metaphor, has given his opinion in this connection as follows. Rasang rasalankaravat kavyam dosha yukchet vibhusitam syadvapu sundaram api svitten kena durabhagam. Translation. As one's body, although well decorated with ornaments, is made unfortunate by even 1 spot of white leprosy, so an entire poem is made useless by a fault, despite alliteration, similes, and metaphors. Text 72. Pancha alankara ebes sanha vichara dui sabda lankara tina artha alankar. Translation. Now hear the description of the 5 literary embellishments. There are 2 ornaments of sound and 3 ornaments of meaning. Text 73. Sabda lankar tina pada ache anuprash Shri Lakshmi Shabde Puna Uktvad Abbas. Translation. There is a sound ornament of alliteration in 3 lines, and in the combination of the words Shri and Lakshmi, there is the ornament of a tinge of redundancy. Text 74. Pratama Charana Pancha Taktarena Panti Titya Charana Hoya Pancha Repa Stiti. Translation. In the arrangement of the first line of the letter Ta, the letter Ta occurs 5 times, and the arrangement of the third line repeats the letter Ra 5 times. Text 75. Chaturta Charana Chari Bakara Prakash Ataiva Shabdalankara Anu Prash. Translation. In the 4th line, the letter Ba occurs 4 times. This arrangement of alliteration is a pleasing, ornamental use of sounds. Text 76. Shri Shabde Lakshmi Shabde Ekas Vastu Ukta Puna Ukta Prayavasa Naha Puna Ukta. Although the words Shri and Lakshmi convey the same meaning and are therefore almost redundant, they are nevertheless not redundant. Text 77. Shri Yukta Lakshmi Artha Artera Vibeda Puna Attavad Abbas Sabdalankar Beda. Translation. Describing Lakshmi as possessed of Shri, opulence, offers a difference in meaning with a tinge of repetition. This is the second ornamental use of words. Text 73. Lakshmir Eva Atalankara Upama Prakash Ara Artalankar Eche Nama Virod Bash. Translation. The use of the words Lakshmir Eva, like Lakshmi, manifests the ornament of meaning called Upam, analogy. There is also the further ornament of meaning called Virodabhas, which is a contradictory indication. Text 79. Can you imagine studying this for 12 years? These grammatical terminologies, etc. It's a whole universe of Devanagari, of Sanskrit. It's the young girl downstairs, she's 17, 18. She has her head so much into studying this, she cannot look left or right. She's been completely immersed for maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years. She's studying in Varanasi University. But it's so captivating for an intelligent mind, completely all-absorbing. Everything you eat, everything you do is just centered around this study of Sanskrit. So this was the nature of these scholars, and this is what they were involved with. Text 79. Gangata te Kamala Janma Sabaras Saboda Kamala Gangara Janma Atyanta Viroda. Translation. Everyone knows that lotus flowers grow in the water of the Ganges, but to say that the Ganges takes birth from the lotus flower seems extremely contradictory. Text 80. Ihan Vishnu Pada Padme Gangara Utpati Viro Dalankara Iha Mahacham Chamat Kriti. Translation. The existence of Mother Ganges begins from the lotus feet of the Lord. Although this statement that water comes from the lotus flower is a contradiction in connection with Lord Vishnu, it is a great wonder. Text 81. Ishvaro Achintya Shaktya Gangare Prakash Ihate Virodha Nahi Viroda Abash. Translation. In this birth of the Ganges by the inconceivable potency of the Lord, there is no contradiction, although it appears contradictory. Purport. The central point of all Vaishnava philosophy is to accept the inconceivable potency of Lord Vishnu. What sometimes appears contradictory from a material viewpoint is understandable in connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because he can perform contradictory activities by dint of his inconceivable potencies. When we try and smear our material intelligence onto the activities that the Lord performs, everything becomes like blurred and inconsistent and incorrect. But if we accept this achintya bhav, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur talked much about this, that the Vaishnava has to have that achintya bhav, that appreciation of the inconceivable nature of the Lord. Achintya. Chintya means the senses. Achintya means beyond the senses. So recognizing that world which exists beyond the senses. In other words, we're not the center of the universe. There is something much more. And to appreciate that opens the consciousness completely. So when we think of these topics, achintya, inconceivable topics, they're reconciled in the form of the Lord. He can reconcile all inconceivable. He can move and not move simultaneously. This is called achintya bheda abheda tattva. This is the philosophy that Mahaprabhu taught. So, yes, reading this here. Modern scientists are puzzled. We were just talking. They cannot even explain how such a large quantity of chemicals has formed the atmosphere. Scientists explain that water is a combination of hydrogen and oxygen, but when asked where such a large quantity of hydrogen and oxygen came from and how they combined to manufacture the great oceans and seas, they cannot answer because they are atheists who will not accept that everything comes from life. Their thesis is that life comes from matter. How absurd. You can't go forward with that conception. Where do all these chemicals come from? The answer is that they are all produced by the inconceivable energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Living entities are part of the Supreme Godhead, and from their bodies come many chemicals. For example, a lemon tree is a living entity that produces many lemons, and within each lemon is a great deal of citric acid. Therefore, if even an insignificant living entity who is but a part of the Supreme Lord can produce so much of a chemical, how much more potency must there be in the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? If you're an atheist, you just don't follow this. Scientists cannot perfectly explain where the chemicals of the world are manufactured, but one can explain this perfectly by accepting the inconceivable energy of the Lord beyond our material senses, achintya. There is no reason for denying this argument, since there are potencies in the living entities who are samples of the personality of Godhead. How much potency there must be in the Supreme Godhead himself, as described in the Vedas, Nityo Nityananam, Chaitanas Chaitananam. He is the chief eternal of all eternals and the chief living entity among all living entities. This is from the Katha Upanishad 2.2.30. You see, Keshav Kashmiri, this scholar, had become bewildered by his own apparent prowess. His false ego had taken over his higher intelligence. He was thinking everything is resting in me, so he couldn't appreciate the inconceivability of the Lord. So anyone of us studying, if we don't appreciate the Lord significantly, we're always going to be dropping our own false ego conceptions to trip us up. You understand? The mind will be trying to understand rather than allowing that knowledge just to flow in and accept it. Unfortunately, atheistic science will not accept that matter comes from life. Scientists insist upon their most illogical and foolish theory that life comes from matter, although this is quite impossible. They cannot prove in their laboratories that matter can produce life, yet there are thousands and thousands of examples illustrating that matter comes from life. They take the semen of an animal and produce an embryo in a test tube, but where have they taken that semen from? Where have they taken those ingredients from? They've taken them from life. And then they're trying to say we produce life. Completely rubbish. Therefore, in the Sri Caitanya Caritamrta, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says that as soon as one accepts the inconceivable potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, no great philosopher or scientist can put forward any thesis to contradict the Lord's power. This is expressed in the following Sanskrit verse. This is a very wonderful topic. It brings us up, our consciousness. It elevates our consciousness by hearing these explanations. Text 82. Ambujam abunijatam kvachid apina jatam abujad ambu mura bidi tad viparitam padambo janmaha nadi jata. Translation: everyone knows that lotus flowers grow in the water, but water never grows from a lotus. All such contradictions, however, are wonderfully possible in Krishna. The great river Ganges has grown from his lotus feet. So in Krishna, this is conceivable. How much do we believe in Krishna? This is where it comes down to. The distinction between a theist and an atheist. It really comes down to this, that's all. We might be theists and believing, but how much do we believe? Do we believe absolutely, or do we believe sometimes when it is comfortable for me? But when it's not comfortable, I won't believe it. So we have to be submissive to the Lord, completely submissive, understanding that we know nothing. Text 83. Gangara Mahatva Satya Sadhana Tahara Vishnu Padapati Anumana Alankara. Translation: the real glory of Mother Ganges is that she has grown from the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu. Such a hypothesis is another ornament called Anuman. Text 84. Stula e pancha dosha pancha alankar shukshma vicharya yadi achaya apar. Translation: I have simply discussed the 5 gross faults and 5 literary embellishments of this verse. But if we consider in fine detail, we will find unlimited faults. Pratipakavitva tomara devata prasad avichare kavya avyasa pada dosha bad. Translation: you have achieved poetic imagination and ingenuity by the grace of your worshipable demigod. But poetry not well reviewed is certainly subject to criticism. Text 86. Vichari kavitva kale haya sunirmal salankara haile artha kare jalamal. Poetic skill used with due consideration is very pure, and with metaphors and analogies it is dazzling. Suniya prabhuvakya digvijaya vishmita mukhanana saravakya pratibha stambita. After hearing the explanation of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the champion poet was struck with wonder. His cleverness stunned. He could not say anything. Have you ever met a very arrogant person? A scholarly, arrogant person? You know, when they come against their match, all of that folds and they have nothing left because their whole identity has been hinged on their intellectual prowess. And all of a sudden, if that is smashed, they have no personality behind it. You understand? If you're a full person and you just take whatever attributes you have as the mercy of the Lord, then actually you have nothing to lose at any time. But that person who states his reputation on his arrogant philosophical identity, yes, just becomes completely like crushed. So the whole life of Keshav Kashmiri is being crushed by Mahaprabhu, but he doesn't want to crush him. This is the expertise of Mahaprabhu we're going to witness. His cleverness stunned, he could not say anything. Kahite kahaya kicho na aisha utara. Dabe vicharya mane hoya. Fana fara. Translation. He wanted to say something, but no reply would come from his mouth. He then began to consider this puzzle within his mind. Text 39. Padurya balaka kaile mora buddhi lopa jani saraswati more koriya chena kopa. Translation. This mere boy has blocked my intelligence. 14, 15-year-old boy. I can therefore understand that Mother Saraswati has become angry with me. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is clearly said that all intelligence comes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in everyone's heart as the Paramatma. The Paramatma gave the Pandit the intelligence to understand that because he was proud of his learning and wanted to defeat even the Supreme Lord, by the will of the Lord and through the agency of Mother Saraswati, he had been defeated. One should not therefore be too proud of one's position, even if one is a greatly learned scholar. If he commits an offense at the lotus feet of the Lord, he will not be able to speak properly, in spite of his learning. In every respect, we are controlled. Our only duty, therefore, is to surrender always to the lotus feet of the Lord and not be falsely proud. Mother Saraswati created this situation in favor of the champion Pandit, so that he might surrender unto Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu's. I can remember one personality came to my Gurudev previously, and he was very knowledgeable, very shastrically astute. And then he decided after some time, some years, that he rejected my Gurudev and went somewhere else. And for about 6 months, he literally couldn't even speak. His whole voice physically was actually almost like he had developed an impediment. It's like his whole speech was actually taken away. So these are practical things that we see. When we become proud of our scholastic ability, whatever, Krishna will purify us and just take away that ability to show us who is in control. Is it because he wants to give us mercy? And if we're always thinking, I am the controller, how great am I? How can we actually really progress in spiritual life? I've given the example numerous times about a musician. If a musician thinks his music is so good, he'll never get further than that. But if he starts to be humble and thinks, well, actually, that wasn't so good. Now let's look at a new horizon. Let's see how I can improve. That greed, that utsaha, always has to be there in the life of the bhakta. To go forward, we always have to be going forward. We can never sort of sit back and think, yes, I've done so well, I've done so much. Never the bhakta, the sadhak, will ever think like that. Rupa Goswami was never thinking like that. Raghunath Das was never thinking like that. Otherwise, how can that lobha, that greed, be in the heart? The whole quality of Rag Marg is greed, is enthusiasm. We have to be constantly lamenting my inability to understand these topics. Lord, give me mercy, Lord, and then Krishna will. But don't become proud when it comes. That's the point. Because it will come. But don't be proud. Text 90. Ye vikyaya karila se manusyara nahi shakti nimani mukhe rahi bale apana saraswati. Translation. The wonderful explanation the boy has given could not have been possible for a human being. Therefore, Mother Saraswati must have spoken personally through his mouth. Text 91. Etabavi kahi suna namani pandita tava vyakyat sune ame na ilan vishmita. Translation. Thinking thus, the Pandit said, My dear Nimai Pandit, please hear me. Hearing your explanation, I am simply struck with wonder. Text 92. Alankara nahi pada nahi shastra vyasa kaminas e saba artha korile prakasha. Translation. I am surprised that you are not a literary student and do not have long experience in studying the Shastras. How have you been able to explain all these critical points? Text 93. Iha sune Mahaprabhu atibadarangi Tanhara Hridaya Jani Kahe Kara Bangi. Hearing this and understanding the Pandit's heart, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied in a humorous way, Shastrera vichara bale manda nahi jane, Saraswati e balaya se bali vani. Translation, my dear sir, I do not know what is good composition and what is bad, but whatever I have spoken must be understood to have been spoken by Mother Saraswati. So he's reflecting directly back to the scholar. Text 95. Ihasune digvijay karila nischaya, Shishu dvare devi more kaila parjaya. When he heard this judgment from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Pandit sorrowfully wondered why Mother Saraswati wanted to defeat him through a small boy. Achitanra nivedka kari japa gyan, Shishu dvare kaile mora eta apaman. Translation, I shall offer prayers and meditation to the goddess of learning, the champion concluded, and ask her why she has insulted me so greatly through this boy. Text 97. Vastuta Saraswati Asuda Sloka Karela Vichara Samya Tanra Buddhi Adi-lila. Translation, Saraswati had in fact induced the champion to compose his verse in an impure way. Furthermore, when it was discussed, she covered his intelligence, and thus the Lord's intelligence was triumphant. Text 98. Tabe shishya gana shava hasite lagila, ta saba nishedi prabhu kaviri kahila. When the poetic champion was thus defeated, all the Lord's disciples sitting there began to laugh loudly. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked them not to do so, and he addressed the poet as follows. Text 99. Tumi bada pandita mahakvari siromani yanra mukhe bahiraya ache kavi vani. Translation, you are the most learned scholar and the topmost of all great poets, for otherwise how could such fine poetry come from your mouth? So now he's flattering him again a bit. Text 100. Tomara kavitva yena ganga jaledar, Toma sama kavi kota nahi deha ar, deki ar. Your poetic skill is like the constant flow of the waters of the Ganges. I find no one in the world who can compete with you. Text 101. Bhava bhuti jayadeva ari kalidas, Tan sabara kavitve ache dosha prakash. Even in the poetic compositions of such great poets as Bhavabhuti, Jayadev, and Kalidas, there are many examples of faults. Text 102. Dosha gune vichare e alpa kariye man, kavitva karene shakti tanha e se vakani. Translation, such mistakes should be considered negligible. One should see only how much poets have displayed their poetic power. Purport. In Srimad Bhagavatam 1:5-11 it is said, Tadvag vishargo janata go viplavo yasmin prati shlokam advadvyat api namanya anantasya yaso nikani yat shravanti jayanti gananti Shadava. In explaining the glories of the Lord, inexperienced men may compose poetry with many faults, but because it contains glorification of the Lord, great personalities read it, hear it, and chant it. Despite its minute literary discrepancies, one must study poetry on the merit of its subject matter. According to Vaishnava philosophy, any literature that glorifies the Lord, whether properly written or not, is first class. There need be no other considerations. The poetic compositions of Bhavabhuti or Shrikanta include Malati Madhava, Uttara Charita, Veera Charita, and many similar Sanskrit dramas. This great poet was born during the time of Bhojaraj as the son of Nilakanta, a Brahmana. Kalidas flourished during the time of Maharaj Vikramaditya, and he became the state poet. He composed some 30 or 40 Sanskrit dramas, including Kumara Sambhav, Abhigyan Shakuntala, Mega Duty. His drama Raghu Vamsa is especially famous. We have already described Jaidev in chapter 13 of the Adi-lila. Text 103. Shaishva Chapalaya Kichuna Labe Amara Shishyare Samana Muni Nakan Tomara. Translation: I am not even fit to be your disciple. Therefore kindly do not take seriously whatever childish impudence I have shown. Text 140. Ajiva Shayaha Kali Maliba Abara Suniba Tamara Mukhe Shastrare Vichara. We see the opposite, how it would be in material world. If someone defeats such a huge Digvijay, they would take advantage, go for the kill, annihilate him completely, make him look completely foolish, completely dismantle him, mock him. What is Mahaprabhu doing? He's reinstating him. He's seeing the qualities in him. He's giving him back his existence, more or less. His existence was shattered. Now, this is the mercy, this is the speciality of Mahaprabhu, which we're appreciating here more than anything, is this mercy to re-inspire this poet, because ultimately he becomes his disciple, a great disciple of Mahaprabhu, in the Nimbaditya line, actually. Please go back home, and tomorrow we may meet again, so that I may hear discourses on the Shastras from your mouth. Text 105. E mata nijagare gela dui jane, kaviyatra koile sarasvati aradane. Translation: in this way both the poet and Caitanya Mahaprabhu went back to their homes, and at night the poet worshipped Mother Saraswati. Text 106. Saraswati snapne tanha upadesha koile, sakshat ishvara kari prabhuke janile. In a dream, the goddess informed him of the Lord's position, and the poetic champion could understand that Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. This is the whole purpose of this amazing pastime. Text 107. Prate Ashi Prabhupada Laila Sarana Prabhu Kripa Koile Tanra Kandila Bandana. Translation: the next morning the poet came to Lord Caitanya and surrendered unto his lotus feet. The Lord bestowed his mercy upon him and cut off all his bondage to material attachment. Purport: the same process advocated by Lord Sri Krishna in his teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, as it is, surrender unto me in all instances, was advocated by Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu. The champion surrendered unto the Lord, and the Lord favored him. One who is favored by the Lord is freed from material bondage, as stated in Bhagavad Gita, Chaktva deham punarjanma naiti mam ritisorajana. As they surrender unto me, I will reward them. Yayitam mam pravadyanti. And actually, this poet, Keshav Kashmir, is described in the Chaitanya Bhagavat because he had hundreds, thousands of followers and elephants and a huge, huge entourage he'd picked up, acquired. This was from all his travels all around Bharatvarsh, and he'd ended up in Navadvip. He surrendered all of these personalities, his elephants, his whole entourage to Mahaprabhu. Everything he gave. He took nothing, but Mahaprabhu gave it back again, which is his magnificence also. So they're both magnificent. He's magnificent in surrendering, and Mahaprabhu is magnificent in returning it. So Krishna is the same way. We are magnificent to surrender, and when we surrender, Krishna will give you back whatever it was you surrendered. You thought that you'd surrendered. You understand? You think you're surrendering so much, perhaps materially, Krishna will just again reinstate it. Text 108. If he thinks it's going to help your bhakti. Huh? Yes. Yes, if he thinks that will help your bhakti. Whatever will help your bhakti. Bhagyavantan Digvijaya Shafala Jivana Vidya Bale Faila Mahaprabhura Charana. Translation: the poetic champion was certainly most fortunate. His life was successful by dint of his vast learning and erudite scholarship, and thus he attained the shelter of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Purport: Sri Narottam Das Thakur has sung that the best qualification for taking shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya is to be the most fallen, because the Lord came specifically to deliver the fallen souls. In this age, there are very few scholars. Almost everyone is a fallen meat-eater, drunkard, woman hunter, or gambler. Such persons are never considered learned scholars. Many of the scholars are like this, woman hunters, gamblers, etc., even if they pose as such, because these so-called scholars superficially see that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's these so-called scholars superficially see that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu associates with the fallen souls. They think that he is meant for a lower class of men, but that they do not need him. Thus, such like Haridas Thakur was from a Muslim family, Rai Ramananda was from a Kayashta class. They were actually not high-class Brahmins. Some were. Thus, such scholars do not take to the Krishna consciousness movement. To be puffed up with false learning, therefore, is a disqualification for accepting the Krishna consciousness movement. But here is a special example, for although the poetic champion was a greatly learned scholar, the Lord also favored him because of his humble submission. He had the ability to be humble in his dream, to realize who is this person. Text 109. E Sabalila Varnya Chena Vrindavan Das Ye Kichu Vishesh Ihan Karila Prakash. Translation: Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur has described all these incidents elaborately. I have only presented the specific incidents he has not described. The nectarian drops of Chaitanya Goshanir Lila Amritera Dar Savendrira Tripta Hoya Sravana Yahar. The nectarian drops of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes can satisfy the senses of everyone who hears them. Text 111. Shri Rupa Raghunath Pade Yareya Shah Caitanya Caritamrta Ikahe Krishna Dasa. Translation: praying at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Sri Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I, Krishnadas, narrate the Sri Caitanya Caritamrta, following in his footsteps. So I think it's in Adi-lila, Canto 1, Chapter 5. This pastime is described in the Chaitanya Bhagavat. And it's beautiful to appreciate the embellishments because you see more graphically the purification of this Keshav Kashmiri and what he goes through and how merciful is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to him. And how merciful is this pastime for us to actually hear this discourse, to hear the intricacies of the Sanskrit language. This is very healthy for us, because there are those who think that this is a sentimental movement. They just chant Hare Krishna and dance, etc. But when you understand the subject matters, the grammatical presentations that are here in the scriptures, it's very, very enlivening. There's great strength for the mind to hear these topics. It gives us some grounding, we can say, to hear something very clearly described, not just a sentimental thing. Understand? Jai Sachinandan Gaurahari ki Jai, Ananta Kota Vaishnava Vrinda ki Jai, Gau Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Oh Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Oh Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gauda Hari Bol. Itai Gauda Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gauda Hari Bol. Go, friend. Hari Bol. Any question, Vera? No question? Question?
Yes, Maharaj, my question was based. Oh, sorry, did you ask?
Yes, I asked you.
Yeah, he did ask.
My initial impression when you were describing the technical nature of the
Sanskrit language. Yes, yes, yeah.
the school, my question was going to be, but Maharaj, I don't understand a word of this.
Yes,
I'm so distant from all of this
yes, yes,
unfolding,
yes,
and I was feeling guilty
yeah,
that you're taking the pain to feed us, spoon feed this, but I don't feel no connection with it. But then towards the end, when you described it, it did make sense to me.
yes.
So,
So much is there.
it's purifying.
Yes,
Well, every word of it is purifying.
yes.
But only when you explained it,
Oh.
Maharaj. That's
But
the point I wanted to make.
Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami explains it. He explains it in this way. He makes it very intensely grammatical,
Yeah.
and it's like you're breaking your head to try and understand
I
it.
didn't understand.
But then when you appreciate the speciality of this language, I think that's a big lesson here, to appreciate how civilized is this Vedic civilization, we can say, compared to the barbaric Western civilization, where we've had so much influence from. Even Bharatvash itself has been influenced and been downtrodden by this barbaric civilization, and has tried to forget the jewels of their own treasury. And just now, at this point in time, they're beginning to appreciate their own extraordinary greatness, Bharatvash itself. The beginning, it's working through material layers, but then very quickly it'll come to the scientific layers. All the apparent scientific accomplishments of the West were actually done thousands of years ago here in India, and they're all still recorded. Like I said the other day, this AI phenomena that everyone's shouting about, it has its derivatives in the Devanagari script. All the way, its conjunction with its components, etc. The intricacies of that Devanagari, of the Sanskrit language, the same intricacy with 55,000 sounds, is a similar phenomena as the AI. I don't understand it, so don't ask me to explain it, but what I do understand is that AI is very complex, but Sanskrit is even more complex. So that relationship,
What I appreciate about what you said, with the Sanskrit about, when you, there's how many?
55,000.
There's so many,
Write it down so you don't forget it. 55,000.
55,000, and each thing is, explanation is very specific, and I think even as devotees we start to learn a little bit of the Sanskrit
We do.
terms, we can appreciate more
Yes.
what we're hearing and
Yes.
what the pastimes are
Yes.
and the dynamics of
Yes.
the pastimes.
Yes.
And the other thing I appreciate too is that when they're talking about this mix-up of the grammar, when I can't remember exactly, but when the subject is in front and then it's around the other way
And the
around, how
predicate,
it
yeah.
changes the whole meaning.
Yes.
And we find that even in the English with the same thing, when editors come along and they don't really understand the Sanskrit, or they don't even understand the English, or even through their own mind and concepts and what they're perceiving at that point themselves, what they're understanding, they mix it around and it changes the meaning completely.
If it's
Yeah.
if it doesn't have these parameters, then it's like rock and roll music today. Has no parameters. It's just crazy sounds however you feel like you want to do it.
Yeah.
But you listen to Indian music and it's all in rag and tals, and it's very, very specific.
And it sounds so beautiful.
Yes.
Even if you don't understand
It's
it,
celestial.
it goes to the heart, doesn't it?
Yes, because the heart will appreciate that. The heart is absolutely pure. The heart of the jiva in his spiritual consciousness Like we're appreciating the distinction between absolute purity and some sort of perversion of that, you know? So it's very helpful for elevating our
Yes,
consciousnesses.
but to learn it and to really
Yes.
and then on a spiritual platform it must be even
Well, it's bringing us to the spiritual platform.
But on a fully spiritual platform, I mean,
Yes,
just it's a whole different thing.
yes. You really perceive this in the Vidagdha Madhav.
Yes.
Because in Vidagdha Madhav there are many sections where Vishaka and Lalita are speaking in Sanskrit. And Sri Radharani, she's also speaking in Sanskrit. Krishna's hearing in Sanskrit. But then he's speaking in another language, Brij Bhasha or something. So, but it takes it to other dimensions. You know, it opens the dimensions of the communication and the specialities and the subtleties of the communications, which we don't have in the Western world. It's just like, it's like the subtleties of food, for example, in Western. You know what Westerners eat generally on the plate? They'll have a piece of meat, some peas, and some potatoes. Like that's the general meal for a, you know, barbarian. And they think that they're doing good, you know, eating a leg of an animal or something like that. Hey, it's so barbaric. When we start to realize the depth of depravity of the Western culture, where we've been influenced, even if you're an Indian, you've been influenced so much by this barbaric civilization. And it's time just to push it out and take greatest pride in your own civilization and find all these truths and treasures that are here in Bharatvash, in the civilization of this country, in scientific understand, like the shape of the earth, for example. It's not round and like a globe. It is actually like a disc and flat. This is actually how it is, and it's been described like that. So to give it credibility as a globe is kowtowing to the atheistic conception, not the Vedic conception. Anyway, so many topics that we should appreciate our spiritual heritage now.
How many verses and symbols in this?
55,000. See, our memories just from midnight to midnight. Srila Gurudev ki jai, Vanshakalpatarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhaveva cha, Patitanam Pavnivyo, Vaishnavevyo, Namo Namaha.